Let's get some further thoughts and analysis now with Director of the Lowy Institute's Public Opinion and Foreign Policy Program, Natasha Kassam. Natasha, thanks so much for your time. This has been really quite a dramatic turnaround, hasn't it, in terms of the way we see China from economic partner now to security threat?
It's a really dramatic change. It was only a couple of years ago that Australia was actually an outlier in the Western world in terms of public opinion towards China. Australians felt more positively towards China than most countries. But we've seen that really slide just in the course of 3 years. In 2018, 83% of Australians saw China as more of an economic partner rather than a security threat. Today, it is completely flipped. It's 63% say that China is more of a security threat to Australia.
However, and this is the caveat, more than half, 57%, say Australia should remain neutral in any potential conflict between the two major powers.
I think there's a few things going on there. So Australians are much more concerned about a military conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan than they were in the past. A majority now say that that poses a critical threat to Australia's interests. But as you say, the majority would prefer to stay neutral in the case of a conflict between the two. I think that actually is consistent with long-standing reluctance by the Australian public to deploy our military overseas. I think it comes in part from disillusionment with what happened in the Middle East. And so Australians today, in the main, would prefer to stay out of such a thing. Of course, as you just discussed, they know that China is also our largest trading partner. So conflict in our region could have catastrophic consequences for a lot of people, but also for Australia's economic prosperity.
Now, in the broad sense, in terms of how we see our own safety, a clear majority, despite some of the looming clouds on the horizon, feels safe and indeed optimistic about the economic rebound.
It's really interesting, isn't it? In 2020, when our poll was in the field in March, when most of Australia was in a lockdown, watching the pandemic unfold across the globe anxiously, we had the lowest levels of safety that Australians have ever felt in the 17 years of the poll, the lowest levels of optimism in our economy. Australians thought that we were about to descend into the first real recession for 29 years. So what we're seeing this year, I think, is a real rebound in some of those sentiments. Australians are feeling much more optimistic. They're feeling much safer. And I think that speaks to the idea that COVID-19 doesn't pose the same threat that they thought it did. I should caveat, of course, that our fieldwork was in March, as it always is. So today in Sydney, we're a little bit more worried about COVID than we might have been in March when we were asking these questions.